In the streets of 16th century Lima, Peru, at a time when society was deeply divided by race and class, there lived a man the world once rejected, yet heaven chose to honor. His name was Saint Martin de Porres. He was not born into privilege. He was not welcomed by society. And yet, his life would quietly transform an entire city. Today, he is remembered as the Saint of Charity, the patron of racial harmony, the protector of animals, and the apostle of the poor. Yet before the church recognized his holiness, before crowds honored his name, he was simply a poor mixed-race boy whom society looked down upon. And it is precisely from that place of rejection that his extraordinary story begins. Before he healed the sick, before he comforted the dying, before miracles followed him wherever he walked, he learned to endure being unseen. Born into a divided world, 1579. Martin was born on December 9th, 1579, in Lima, then part of the Spanish Viceroyalty of Peru. His father, Juan de Porres, was a Spanish nobleman and knight of the Order of Alcantara. His mother, Ana Velázquez, was a freed woman of African descent. Because of this mixed heritage, Martin grew up facing harsh discrimination in a rigid colonial society that valued status and skin color. In colonial Peru, people of mixed race were legally restricted. They were barred from universities, religious orders, and positions of honor. Martin grew up knowing that many doors would be closed to him, not because of sin, but because of his skin. Some neighbors whispered when he passed. Some looked away. Some reminded him, with their silence, that he did not belong. Tragically, his father abandoned the family for many years, leaving Martin's mother to raise him in poverty. Life was not only unfair, it was unstable. Food was uncertain. The future was uncertain. And yet, instead of allowing suffering to harden his heart, Martin responded differently. Some children grow bitter when they are rejected. Others learn to reject the world in return. But Martin chose another path. From an early age, he showed unusual tenderness. He cared for stray dogs and cats. He shared food with the poor, even when his own family had little. He prayed constantly, often spending long moments in silence, speaking to God. When he had nothing to give, he gave attention. When he had no power, he gave compassion. Little did anyone know, these quiet acts of kindness were preparing him for something far greater. A call to religious life. As he grew older, Martin felt drawn to serve God completely. This calling did not come as a sudden vision. It grew slowly in the silence of prayer and in the steady rhythm of service. So, at the age of 15, he sought entrance into religious life at the convent of Our Lady of the Rosary in Lima, which belonged to the Order of Preachers, also known as the Dominicans. It is important to understand, he was not a Franciscan, nor an Augustinian. He was a Dominican lay brother. However, because of racial laws at the time, he was not immediately accepted as a full member. Instead, he entered as a donado, meaning he performed the lowest and most difficult tasks in exchange for living with the community. And so, day after day, he cleaned floors, washed laundry, cooked meals, and cared for the sick. These were the tasks no one noticed, the work no one praised. The convent itself was not a quiet refuge from the world. It was crowded, noisy, and constantly visited by the sick and the desperate. Martin rose before dawn for prayer. He scrubbed floors until his hands cracked. He washed infected wounds without gloves. He slept little, yet those who lived with him said he carried a quiet joy, the joy of someone who knew his life had meaning. Eventually, his humility and dedication moved the community, and he was allowed to take vows as a Dominican lay brother. Still, he never sought higher status. In fact, he preferred the hidden life of service. As a Dominican, Martin shaped his life around prayer, truth, and charity. His nights were often spent in silence before the crucifix. His days were spent washing wounds, carrying the sick, and feeding the hungry. Of Lima. In time, Martin trained as a barber surgeon, the equivalent of basic medical practice in the 1600s. As a result, he was placed in charge of the monastery infirmary. At first, he treated wounds with herbs and simple remedies. He cleaned infections, he bandaged sores. He did what anyone with compassion and basic knowledge could do. But gradually, something more began to happen. The sick began recovering in ways that could not easily be explained. People suffering from high fevers suddenly improved. Severe infections disappeared. Wounds healed with unusual speed. Some accounts even describe the blind seeing and the crippled walking. One documented case tells of a young novice who was close to death from a violent fever. Physicians had given up hope. Martin prayed through the night at his bedside, whispering psalms and tending to him with care. By morning, the fever broke. The friars present later testified under oath that no natural explanation could account for the sudden recovery. Importantly, these were not rumors whispered in secret. They were witnessed by fellow Dominican friars, physicians, wealthy citizens, laborers, and clergy. Many later gave sworn testimony about what they saw. In fact, when the church eventually investigated his life, dozens of eyewitness accounts were recorded under oath, carefully documenting the miracles attributed to him. And yet, despite his growing reputation, Martin remained humble. Whenever someone praised him, he redirected the glory to God. When others called him holy, he called himself a sinner in need of mercy. Compassion before rules. At one point, the monastery faced serious financial strain. There was not enough money to care for all the sick who came seeking help. The rules of the house required cleanliness. The reality outside the door demanded mercy. When questioned about continuing to admit patients, Martin responded with words that still echo today. "Compassion, my dear brother, is preferable to cleanliness." In other words, mercy must always come before comfort. At times, when there was no money to feed the poor, Martin would secretly sell his own belongings, even his cloak, to buy bread and medicine for those who came to him. On cold nights, he was seen shivering, having given away his coat to someone poorer. At other times, when he felt he had failed in humility, he asked his superior to give him the hardest tasks, not as punishment, but as medicine for pride. He feared becoming admired more than becoming tired. And remarkably, time and again, when resources ran out, unexpected donations would arrive. food multiplied. Debts were paid at the last moment. To those around him, it seemed as though providence followed wherever he walked. The story of the rats. Perhaps one of the most beloved stories about Saint Martin reveals not only his power, but his heart. When the monastery was overrun by rats, others wanted to kill them. Instead, Martin chose a different path. He spoke gently to the animals, asking them to leave the building. He promised that food would be provided for them elsewhere. According to witnesses, the rats followed him out, and they never returned. This simple story carries a profound message. Harmony is possible when kindness leads. To Martin, animals were not nuisances. They were part of God's creation, and if God cared for them, so would he. That is why he is often depicted with a dog, a cat, and a mouse peacefully eating from the same bowl, a powerful image of unity in a divided world. Mystical gifts beyond the natural. As if healings were not enough, other extraordinary events were reported. Some missionaries later testified that, during moments of danger or illness, a friar resembling Martin appeared to comfort them, even though Martin was documented to be in Lima at the time. The church recorded these testimonies cautiously as part of the investigation. This phenomenon, known as bilocation, has also been reported in saints such as Padre Pio. Additionally, fellow friars testified that during deep prayer, Martin sometimes rose off the ground in levitation. Some described seeing his face radiate light. To the world, these stories sounded unbelievable. To those who lived with him, they were simply signs of a soul deeply united to God. Still, he insisted he was nothing more than a servant of God. His final days, 1639. After a lifetime of service, Martin fell ill in 1639. His body, worn by years of fasting and labor, finally weakened. As news spread through Lima, crowds gathered outside the monastery, the poor whom he had fed, the sick whom he had healed, even city officials. Some came to ask for one last prayer. Others came simply to say, "Thank you." When he died on November 3rd, 1639, at age 59, the city mourned openly. People wept in the streets. After his death, the poor of Lima guarded his body through the night. They pressed cloths against his hands and robe, believing even his presence had brought them hope. It was said that even before the church declared it, the people already knew a saint had lived among them. Recognition by the church. Centuries later, after thorough investigation of his life and miracles, he was beatified in 1837 by Pope Gregory XVI. Then, on May 6, 1962, he was canonized, officially declared a saint, by Pope John XXIII. To reach canonization, verified miracles attributed to his intercession after death were carefully examined and approved. The Church moved slowly and carefully because truth matters when declaring a saint. With that declaration, Martin de Porres became the first Black saint of the Americas. His lasting legacy. Today, his legacy continues to grow. He is the patron saint of racial harmony, social justice, public health workers, barbers, mixed-race people, and animals. His monastery in Lima still stands. Pilgrims visit his tomb. Schools and churches bear his name. He lived at the same time as Saint Rose of Lima and Saint John Macias, a quiet constellation of saints in one city, reminding the world that holiness often grows in hidden places. Saint Martin is not remembered because he escaped suffering, but because he transformed it into service. In a society divided by prejudice, he chose unity. In a world obsessed with power, he chose humility. In the face of suffering, he chose compassion. And through that compassion, miracles followed. Today, in a world still wounded by racism, Saint Martin stands as a living contradiction to hatred. A man once rejected by society, now honored by heaven. Saint Martin de Porres did not seek fame. He did not seek power. He did not seek status. He chose love. And through love, miracles followed. Saint Martin de Porres, humble Dominican brother, friend of the poor, protector of animals, pray for us.